Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and this is actually a follow-up video to my Cold Steel American Lawman video. I would recommend, if you want to remember how that knife looked, go watch the first couple of minutes of that video. If you don't want to, I'll give you a little reminder. This is the Cold Steel Recon 1, and the American Lawman comes in the exact same finish. Black G10, black tough coat, I believe is what they call their coating. And that coating is everywhere, all the hardware, everything else. And so that's how the American Lawman came. And you can see the problem even on this knife. Look here on the back, the coating is coming off, and it's going to come off in a weird place. I haven't really done a lot of batoning or anything with this knife, so you'd wonder why it's coming off there, but that's the nature of this coating. It kind of sucks. It comes off pretty easily from use, and so many people choose to do something else. And I did something else. This is my American Lawman, and this actually turned out so good that I may go back and do the same thing to my Recon 1. What I did was strip all the coating off of this. I just used a typical hardware store paint stripping chemical. By the way, it did take considerably longer to do this coating, to deal with it, than it took to strip off paint. I'd done a previous project with the same stripper, and I'd put a bunch of hardware off of this old shelving unit that's a permanent fixture in the house, and it's been painted like a bazillion times, and so the hardware looked horrible. I took it off, I put it in the coating, it stripped the paint off in like 45 minutes. This was not that way. I put this in and the stripper took hours and hours and hours. I checked it after 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Finally, I put it in about 7 o'clock in the morning. Finally, around 5, it was at a point where I could, deal with it. And so I started stripping it off at that point. It still wouldn't come off easily. When I'd done the other hardware, I'd sort of whittled out a sort of wooden scraper because the stripping material won't hurt wood. You can use it on wooden furniture and it'll be fine. So I used the wood to strip off the paint on the hardware for the cabinetry. It would not touch this stuff. It would do a little bit, but it wouldn't come off easily. And so I got a wire brush with brass bristles. I wanted the brass so that it would be softer than the material I was using. And then once I got that and started rubbing this off, it did come off pretty quickly. I'd say it took me about 15 minutes to get most of it off, and then another 15 minutes to make sure that, like in this little finger choil or inside the where the lock bar interfaces with the blade tang. Man. A couple places like that were a little harder, and so it took me a few more minutes to finish those off. As you can see, I also did the lock bar. So the process, it was not too bad. I would recommend what you can actually do is you can take off just one scale. I took off this scale with the side without the pocket clip. You do have to loosen those pocket clip screws though. They actually screw into the back spacer and will hold the knife together. So you've got to take all of that apart. Then you can just lift the scale off. And once you lift off the one scale, you can leave everything on this side together. Lift off the scale, pull everything apart, and everything, all the inside stuff is all black as well. Even the little spring that engages the lock is black. So I didn't care about that because you're not going to see it on the inside. I took the blade, I took the lock bar, put it in the stripping chemical, and the paint eventually came off. As I said, it took a few hours. Now, once I had it all off, and it did take some effort, I will say the lock bar here, because there's more angles and more little spaces, was actually harder to do than the blade because there's lots of big flat surface area here that you can scrape off pretty easily. By the way, use gloves when you're doing this. The stripper is bad for your skin, and I did get some on me. I was using gloves, but while I was kind of cleaning up, I got some on me, and you can feel like it's painful to get on you. It burns your skin pretty quickly. So be aware of that. If you're going to go through this process, get some gloves on and do it either outside or in a really well ventilated area. The reaction between the paint and the chemical is not good for you. I did it outside. It was nice weather, so I was able to set everything up outside and get the job done. And then bring it in after. When you clean up with a little bit of soapy water. That makes sure that all the chemical is stripped off of everything. One of my main concerns was the wire brush I used, which had a plastic handle. The stripper will eat that plastic, so I had to make sure that I got it all off of that. So the process was not that bad, right? You just got, I went at this side, so you take out these screws here, you take out this screw here, and then gently pry everything apart. Oh yeah, one more screw here. Comes apart pretty easily. These were T6s, this was a T10. Not too bad. One of the things that you should know if you're thinking about doing this is that inside is actually not that difficult to deal with. It comes apart pretty easily. You can pretty easily see how the whole thing works. And by the way, the Apostle has a whole video of this. Now, let's get into what I decided to do. Once I got all the paint off, I started looking. I kind of put everything loosely together and looked at the knife and thought, what do I want to do with this? And what I settled on is I remembered that I had some very high, like 2000 grit sandpaper in the garage. And I went out and got it, metal sandpaper. Went out and got it and started just polishing the flats. So that's all of this. Also, the blade tang was polished. Polished all of the surfaces where the lock interfaces with the blade. I polished the bronze washers. And once all the, every surface that interfaces, I polished it up and got it nice and smooth. Be gentle. You don't want to change the actual dimensions of anything, okay? You got to make sure of that, because if you change the dimensions, guess what? You can get blade play, you can get all kinds of problems. So be very careful when you're doing the polishing part of it. And I only wanted to polish the flats because of two reasons. One, I thought by adding, this polished portion, it would break up the knife. It would add some complexity and some interest to the overall look of the knife. And I really think it looks awesome this way. The other thing is, by leaving the bead blast finish on this portion of the blade, you end up hiding any future damage or scrapes or scratches that end up on the blade. It doesn't show very well because of the way the bead blast hides all of that kind of stuff. So I think this is a big improvement. And in addition to, not having the coating messed up now, I actually think the knife looks better, and I can now make it a little bit my own by polishing these surfaces. By the way, I also polished the back of the blade and all the way back to the back of the lock bar. And then I left the bead blasting on the side of the lock bar just to add some continuity. So you've got bead blasting here and bead blasting here. That's my new variation on the cold steel American Lawman. It worked out really well. This is not a hard thing to do. If you're thinking of doing that with your knife, I would recommend it. I actually think the knife looks a lot better in this configuration, and you may want to do something different. Maybe you want to polish the whole thing. Maybe you'll just want to leave the whole thing bead blasted, whatever you want to do. I may actually, because this worked out so well, I may actually do the Recon 1 as well and refinish it, but we'll see. We'll talk about that later. Thanks for watching, YouTube, and as I said, I still love the American Lawman. It really nails a lot of things: blade shape, size, weight, all that stuff. And now that it has sort of a different and very interesting look, I'm actually much happier with it. I love the way this knife turned out, and am really excited now about the way about carrying this knife and using it. I've actually used it a whole lot more. I just think it adds to the pride of ownership when you do some of the work yourself and refinish it and end up with something that looks as cool as this turned out to look. So there's one last look. I'm going to stop talking now, and we'll see you later.